He
I
followed
love
his
the city
maid.
when it rains
What
like
the
this.
mafia boss
Everything
witnessed made
glows.
him lose control.
Yeah, it's beautiful,
His
especially
reputation
walking with
stretched
you.
across the lands, a dark shadow in the world of power. As the head of the mafia, he ruled with cold authority, his every decision calculated, his every word sharp. The world saw him as an untouchable king, a master of both men and kingdoms, but behind his eyes was a secret, a deep loneliness no one dared to question. His mansion was grand, with dark corridors and rooms that seemed to echo with silence. It was a place of constant control, where every servant, every guard knew their place. Yet in the midst of this cold, ordered world, there was one who seemed out of place, Serafina. She was a maid, no more than a shadow in the grand halls, but there was something about her that caught Rydian's attention. She was soft-spoken, graceful in her movements, and always had a distant, thoughtful look in her eyes. The other servants whispered about her, about how she had arrived under mysterious circumstances, but no one knew her true story. Rydian had kept his distance at first, not caring much for the affairs of his servants, but there was something undeniable about her presence. At times, when he passed her in the hallways, he would catch her gaze. It wasn't that she looked at him with fear or respect like the others. No, it was something different, something almost knowing, as though she saw through him. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the mansion in a golden light, Rydian sat alone in his study. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair as he gazed out the window. A storm was coming. He could feel it in the air, a charged energy that prickled at the skin. It wasn't just the weather. Something was stirring in the kingdom, something dangerous. But it was more than that. He had started to notice strange things around the mansion, things he couldn't explain. A vase had fallen from a shelf in an empty room. A candle had lit itself without a hand to hold the flame. And there were whispers, whispers he couldn't place, as though the very walls of the mansion were alive with secrets. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway, drawing Rydian from his thoughts. He stood and moved toward the door, only to find that it was Serafina who appeared in the doorway, holding a tray of tea. She entered silently, her steps light and quiet, and set the tray down on his desk. As she did, their eyes met. For a moment the world seemed to still. "Is there anything else, my lord?" she asked in a voice so soft it seemed to float like a breeze. "No," he replied, his voice low, almost as if he had to force the words out. He cleared his throat, a feeling of unease gnawing at the back of his mind. "Serafina, you've been here for some time now, haven't you?" She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Yes, my lord." Rydian studied her for a moment, his mind whirring. It was strange how little he knew about her. The servants were like open books to him, their lives simple and easy to control. But Serafina, she was different. She was always calm, always composed. And yet there was something almost otherworldly about her, something that set her apart from the rest. "Do you ever wonder about your life before you came here?" Rydian asked, his voice quiet, almost casual, though his heart raced with the desire to know more. Serafina paused, and for a brief second, Rydian could have sworn he saw a flicker of something sadness, perhaps in her eyes. But it was gone before he could be sure. "I do not remember much of the past, my lord," she replied, her voice steady. "Only that I arrived here with nothing." Rydian felt a strange stir of curiosity. "You don't remember?" She shook her head, but there was something in her gaze, something that seemed to say she knew more than she was letting on. He couldn't explain it, but the air around her seemed to shift when she spoke. Like there was something ancient about her, something tied to forces beyond his understanding. Without thinking, Rydian reached out, his hand brushing against hers as he took the teacup from the tray. His fingers lingered for a second too long. Serafina's eyes met his, but she said nothing, her expression as calm and unreadable as ever. Suddenly, the air in the room seemed to grow heavier. Rydian couldn't place it, but there was something in her presence that made him uneasy. He had spent his life in control, never second-guessing his decisions, but with her, he felt something different. A pull. A tug at his heart that he didn't understand. It was as if she had the power to unravel him without even trying. "I should go," Serafina said softly, breaking the silence. "There's work to be done." Rydian watched her leave, his gaze following her retreating figure. The door closed softly behind her, but the feeling of unease lingered. He couldn't explain it, but something had shifted. Later that night, Rydian lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. What was it about her? What was it that made his heart beat faster when she was near? He had dealt with countless women before, but none had ever made him feel this way. None had ever made him feel so out of control. He tossed and turned, but sleep would not come. Finally, he decided to leave his room. There were matters to attend to, after all. As he walked down the darkened hallway, his footsteps echoing in the quiet mansion, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were watching him. It was then that he heard it, a faint sound like a whisper. He froze. It was coming from the forbidden wing of the mansion, a place that no one, not even Rydian, dared to enter. It was said to be cursed, abandoned long ago for reasons unknown. But the whispers, they beckoned him. Driven by a strange sense of curiosity, he moved toward the sound. His heart pounded in his chest as he reached the end of the hallway and stood before the heavy wooden door that led into the forbidden wing. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if he was making a mistake, but the whispering grew louder, more insistent. With a swift motion, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. The darkness swallowed him whole. The room was cold, the air thick with dust. But what caught his attention wasn't the darkness or the stillness. It was the faint glow of light in the corner of the room. He approached it cautiously, his heart racing as the glow grew brighter. There, standing in the center of the room, was Serafina. She was alone, her back to him, her hands raised in a ritualistic pose. A circle of strange symbols was drawn on the floor around her, glowing faintly with a dark energy. Rydian's breath caught in his throat as he realized what he was seeing, a ritual, a forbidden magic. Serafina turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. This time there was no calmness in her gaze. Her eyes were filled with something darker, something ancient. "You shouldn't have followed me," she said softly, her voice carrying an edge of warning. Rydian stood frozen, his mind racing. What had he just stumbled upon? And more importantly, who was she really? The air crackled with an energy that made his skin prickle, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever secrets Serafina was hiding, he knew he was now in too deep to turn back. Rydian stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes locked on Serafina. The strange, glowing symbols around her seemed to pulse with an energy that made the air in the room crackle. Her eyes, too, had changed, no longer calm and soft, but intense, filled with a kind of power Rydian had never seen before. For a moment he thought he might step back, turn around and leave. But something stopped him. She had caught him, yes. But there was something more, something deep inside him that drew him to her, as if he were meant to see this, to know the truth. Serafina slowly lowered her hands and the glow of the symbols faded. The room became dark again, the air heavy with unspoken words. Rydian felt a chill creep down his spine. She didn't speak at first, but he could see the conflict in her eyes. It was as though she wanted to explain everything, but at the same time was terrified of what that might mean. "You shouldn't be here," Serafina said softly, her voice like a breeze. But even in her quiet words there was a strength that made Rydian hesitate. "This place, this magic, it's dangerous. You don't understand what it means." "I want to understand," Rydian replied, his voice low, steady. He stepped forward into the room, though he wasn't sure if he was prepared for the answers he sought. "What is this? What are you really doing here?" Serafina turned away from him, walking to the corner of the room where the symbols had once glowed. "It's a curse," she said quietly. "A curse that's been passed down in my bloodline for generations. A power that's both a blessing and a curse." Rydian's heart beat faster as he took another step toward her. The words she spoke were heavy with meaning, but her back was still turned to him. He couldn't understand. If this was a curse, why was she so calm? Why did she seem to wield this power so effortlessly? "You said it's a curse," Rydian said, his voice uncertain. "But it doesn't look like a curse to me. It looks like you have control over it." Seraphina's shoulders tensed. She remained silent for a long moment before turning to face him. Her eyes were filled with a sadness Rydian couldn't understand. "I don't have control," she whispered. "Not really, not fully. It controls me, and when it does, terrible things happen." Rydian's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean? What happens when it controls you?" Seraphina hesitated, looking away as though she were searching for the right words. "When the magic takes over, it's like being trapped in a storm. It feels like my soul is being ripped apart and all I can do is watch. I can't stop it. But there's more. The power is tied to my bloodline. It can either destroy or save kingdoms. It depends on who controls it." Rydian took another step toward her. "And who controls it now?" Seraphina's eyes met his, and for the first time, Rydian saw the fear in them. "No one controls it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not completely. And that's why I can't let anyone get too close to me. The magic, it's dangerous. And if it's unleashed, it could destroy everything. Everything I've worked for. Everything you've built." Rydian was silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. His mind raced, trying to understand what this all meant. His empire, the one he had spent his entire life building, could it all be at risk because of her? Because of the power she carried? But then he thought of her, of Seraphina. She didn't seem like a threat. She was kind, gentle in a way, but there was a strength in her that he couldn't deny. She wasn't the kind of person who would destroy things without reason. He felt that much. "You're saying that if I don't stay away from you," Rydian said slowly, "this power could destroy everything." Seraphina nodded, her eyes sad. "Yes," she said simply. "But you don't understand. There's more to this. I wasn't meant to be here. I wasn't meant to be a maid. But when I was young, my family, my parents, they made a choice. They hid me. They kept me away from the world so no one would know what I was. But the curse didn't let me go. It followed me." Rydian stood still, trying to digest everything she had said. He had known that Seraphina was special, but this was more than he had imagined. She wasn't just a maid. She was something far more complicated. And whatever magic she held, whatever curse she carried, it was dangerous. He could feel it in his bones. "Seraphina," Rydian said, his voice softening. "I don't understand all of this, but I know one thing for sure. I don't want to lose you." Seraphina's eyes widened, as if his words had struck her deeply. She looked away, as though she couldn't bear to meet his gaze. "Rydian, you don't understand. The more you're around me, the more the magic grows. And if it takes control, it won't be just you and me who suffer. It will be everyone. It will be the kingdom." "I don't care about that," Rydian said, stepping closer to her, his voice firm. "I care about you." She shook her head, her expression conflicted. "You don't know what you're saying. This magic, it's a part of me. And I don't want to drag you into it. I don't want to see you hurt because of me." But Rydian wasn't backing down. "I don't care what's inside you. I care about you. I know there's more to you than what I see, and I want to understand. I want to help you, but you have to let me in." Seraphina looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and longing. For the first time, Rydian saw the vulnerability in her, a side of her she had hidden so well. She was afraid of what would happen if she let someone close. But deep down, Rydian knew that she wanted to believe in him. She wanted to trust him just as much as he wanted to trust her. Before she could speak again, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, breaking the moment. Rydian's eyes narrowed, and Seraphina quickly stepped away from him, moving toward the door. "You have to leave," she said urgently. "If anyone finds out you were here—" "I'll leave," Rydian said, not wanting to argue, but he couldn't help the way his heart beat faster at the thought of leaving her. "But this isn't over, Seraphina. I'll figure this out. I'll help you." She didn't reply, but her eyes seemed to speak the words her lips couldn't. As Rydian turned and left the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that something far bigger than them was unfolding. The danger was real, but so was the pull between them. A connection that neither of them could ignore. The kingdom was on the edge of something terrible, something that would change everything. And Rydian knew one thing for certain. He would stop at nothing to protect Seraphina, even if it meant facing the curse that lay hidden within her. Rydian couldn't shake the image of Seraphina from his mind. The more he thought about her, the more questions piled up. The power that she carried, the curse that she spoke of, it was more than he could understand. But one thing was clear: he couldn't let her go. He couldn't just walk away from someone who had already come to mean more to him than he had ever expected. The days that followed were filled with tension. Rydian found himself becoming more restless, pacing the halls of his mansion, constantly thinking about Seraphina. He had to know more about the magic that had taken hold of her, the magic that she was so afraid of. But the deeper he looked, the more he realized that the danger surrounding her wasn't just the curse itself. It was the people who wanted to use it. The Dark Circle had been an old legend in the kingdom. Whispers of their existence had circulated for years, but no one had ever truly seen them. The Dark Circle was said to be a group of powerful individuals, each with their own dark secrets, who sought to control the ancient magic of the land. Some believed they were simply a myth, others feared they were real and waiting for the right moment to strike. Rydian, however, was starting to believe the rumors. He had received word from one of his most trusted spies that members of the Dark Circle had been seen near his estate. They had been watching Seraphina, and it wasn't just her that they were interested in. They were after her power. It was late one evening when Rydian decided to confront Seraphina. He had learned enough to know that she was in more danger than he had first realized. The Dark Circle was no longer just a rumor, and their interest in her was a threat to everything he had built. He needed answers, and more than that, he needed her to trust him. He found her in the garden, standing alone under the moonlight. The pale glow of the moon seemed to highlight her delicate features, making her appear almost ethereal. For a moment, Rydian just watched her, mesmerized by her presence. She was so much more than a maid, so much more than he had ever imagined. "Seraphina," Rydian called softly, his voice carrying on the wind. She turned to face him, her eyes soft but distant. "My lord," she said, her voice polite but guarded. "I need to speak with you," Rydian said, his tone serious. "It's about the Dark Circle." At the mention of the name, Seraphina's expression shifted. Her calm exterior faltered for just a moment, and Rydian could see the fear in her eyes. "You know about them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've heard rumors," Rydian said, "and I've seen enough to know that they're real. They've been watching you, Seraphina. They want your power, they want to control it." Seraphina's face paled, and she stepped back as if trying to distance herself from him. "I told you, Rydian, this power isn't something anyone can control. If they take it from me, it will destroy them." "I don't care about their destruction," Rydian said, taking a step closer. "I care about you. I care about keeping you safe." She looked at him for a long moment, as if she were searching his face for the truth. Finally, she sighed and lowered her gaze. "The Dark Circle has been after my family for generations," she said softly. "My bloodline is the key to unlocking the full power of the magic. I don't know why they want it, but I've heard stories. Horrible stories. They believe that if they control my magic, they will be able to reshape the kingdom to their will." Rydian felt his heart tighten at her words. He had suspected that the Dark Circle was after her, but hearing it from Seraphina made it all the more real. The kingdom was at the edge of something terrible. If the Dark Circle got what they wanted, there would be no stopping them. "They'll stop at nothing to get to me," Seraphina continued, her voice filled with sorrow. "And if they do, the kingdom will fall." "I can't let that happen, Rydian, I won't." Rydian reached out, taking her hand in his. "Then we'll stop them together." She looked up at him, her eyes wide. For a moment she seemed to hesitate, but then she nodded, the smallest of nods. I don't know if you can, Rydian. They're powerful and they won't stop until they have me, but she paused, looking at their joined hands. But I can't do this alone. Rydian squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of determination. You're not alone, Seraphina. You have me. And I'll do whatever it takes to protect you. For the first time since they had met, Seraphina smiled, a small, fragile smile, but it was a smile nonetheless. Rydian felt his heart lift. Maybe, just maybe, they could face this darkness together. That night, Rydian made plans to confront the Dark Circle. He would gather his most trusted allies and set a trap for the members of the group who had been watching Seraphina. He didn't know how the confrontation would unfold, but he knew one thing: he couldn't let Seraphina face this alone. The next morning, Rydian summoned his most loyal lieutenants to a secret meeting in the depths of his mansion. The room was dimly lit, the stone walls cold and unforgiving, but it was here in the shadows that plans were made and alliances were forged. We need to act fast, Rydian said, his voice steady. The Dark Circle is moving closer and they'll stop at nothing to take Seraphina's power. One of his lieutenants, a man named Caius, nodded grimly. We've heard rumors that they're planning something. We don't know what it is, but if they've been watching her, it's only a matter of time before they make their move. We'll be ready for them, Rydian said. I want every entrance to the mansion guarded, and I want spies sent out to track their movements. We need to know where they are and what they're planning. Another lieutenant, Lucius, spoke up. And if we find them, my lord, what then? Rydian's eyes darkened. We destroy them. The room fell silent at his words. It wasn't often that Rydian made such bold statements. But this wasn't just about protecting his empire anymore. This was personal. The Dark Circle was a threat to Seraphina, and that meant it was a threat to him. Later that evening, Rydian returned to Seraphina's side. He found her in the garden again, but this time she wasn't alone. A figure cloaked in darkness stood by her, watching her closely. Rydian's instincts flared immediately. This was no ordinary visitor. The man's presence was unnatural. A coldness radiated from him. Who are you? Rydian demanded, stepping forward. The man turned, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. I am Kieran, a member of the Dark Circle, he said, his voice smooth and cold. And I have come to offer a choice. Seraphina stiffened beside him, her face pale. Rydian felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. There is no choice here, he growled. You're not welcome. Kieran smiled, a slow, chilling smile. We will see, Rydian. The Dark Circle always gets what it wants. As Kieran's words hung in the air, Rydian knew that the storm was only just beginning. The Dark Circle had made their move, and now everything was at risk. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Rydian couldn't stop thinking about the encounter with Kieran, the member of the Dark Circle. The man's words echoed in his mind. The Dark Circle always gets what it wants. It was a warning, a reminder that the battle ahead would not be easy, but Rydian was determined. He couldn't back down now, not when Seraphina's life and the kingdom's future were at stake. Rydian had spent the last few days gathering information and preparing his forces. He had called upon his most trusted lieutenants, the ones who had been loyal to him since the beginning, and they had all agreed the Dark Circle had to be stopped, no matter the cost. He was ready to face them head-on, but there was still one thing that haunted him. The question that had been lingering in his mind since the moment Seraphina had opened up to him. What would happen if he couldn't protect her? If he failed, if the Dark Circle took her power, everything he had built would crumble. That thought weighed heavily on his heart. The kingdom he had worked so hard to build, the people who depended on him, they would all be lost. But more than that, Seraphina would be lost. She had become so much more to him than just a maid. She had become the center of his world, the one person he couldn't imagine living without. Rydian found himself in the garden again that evening, where Seraphina often went to seek solace. The moon was full, casting a silver glow over the flowers and trees. He could see her silhouette in the distance, standing beneath the old oak tree, her back to him. He had grown to know her in ways he had never expected. Her strength, her quiet resolve had captivated him. And now, as the danger grew closer, he found himself drawn to her more than ever before. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Serafina," he called gently. She turned at the sound of his voice, her eyes meeting his with that same mixture of warmth and sorrow. "Rydian," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of weariness. "How are you?" he asked, stepping closer. Serafina sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I'm afraid," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm afraid of what's coming." Rydian took a step forward, closing the distance between them. He reached out, his hand gently resting on her arm. "I won't let anything happen to you," he promised, his voice steady and filled with resolve. "I'll protect you. I'll do whatever it takes." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face as if she were trying to find the truth in his words. "But Rydian, the power inside me, it's dangerous. It's a force that no one should have, not even you." "I don't care about the power," Rydian said, his voice firm. "I care about you, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." For a moment, Serafina was silent. Then she reached up, placing her hand over his. "You don't understand," she said softly. "If the Dark Circle gets what they want, it will destroy everything. It will destroy you, Rydian. The magic inside me, it's too much. It's a burden I've carried for my entire life." Rydian's heart clenched at her words. He could see the fear in her eyes, and he knew she was right. The magic inside her was a force beyond their control. But that didn't change his feelings for her. Nothing would. "Then we'll face it together," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll face it together, and we'll destroy the Dark Circle before they can do any more damage. I'll protect you, Serafina. And I won't let anything come between us." Serafina closed her eyes for a moment, as if weighing his words. When she opened them again, she was silent, but her eyes held something that made Rydian's heart race. It was a mixture of fear and trust. She didn't want to let him in. She didn't want to let herself fall further into a situation where everything was at risk. But deep down, he knew she was beginning to trust him, just as he had begun to trust her. Before she could say anything more, a cold wind swept through the garden, sending a chill through the air. Rydian's senses immediately sharpened. He felt something shift, a presence nearby. His hand instinctively went to the dagger at his side. "Rydian," Serafina whispered, her voice tense. "They're coming." Without another word, Rydian grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the mansion. The danger was closing in, and there was no time to waste. He had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared him for the feeling of dread that settled in his stomach. The Dark Circle was here. As they reached the doors of the mansion, Rydian's lieutenants were already gathered, their faces grim and determined. He could see the tension in their eyes, the knowledge that the battle was near. "We need to act quickly," Rydian said, his voice low but commanding. "They're close. We won't let them take her." One of the lieutenants, Caius, nodded. "We're ready, my lord. But you need to understand, this isn't just about Serafina anymore. The Dark Circle will come for everything we've built. They want control of the kingdom, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." Rydian clenched his fists. "Then we stop them first. We fight for Serafina. We fight for this kingdom. We won't let them take anything from us." The plan was set, and they moved quickly, preparing for the confrontation. Rydian knew that this battle would decide everything. If they failed, the Dark Circle would take Serafina's power, and with it, control of the entire kingdom. As the night wore on, the tension in the air became almost unbearable. Rydian stood at the head of his men, his eyes scanning the darkened grounds, his senses alert for any sign of the Dark Circle. He couldn't shake the feeling that this would be the hardest fight of his life. Then, as if on cue, the air grew colder. A figure appeared in the distance, cloaked in shadow. Rydian's heart skipped a beat. It was Kieran, the same member of the Dark Circle who had warned him just days before. "You should have stayed away, Rydian," Kieran called, his voice carrying on the wind. "You and your little kingdom will fall just like everyone else who tried to stand in our way." Rydian stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "Not today, Kieran," he said, his voice steady and strong. "You're not taking anything from us. This ends tonight." Kieran laughed, a low, mocking sound. "You think you can stop us? We have what we need. The power of Seraphina's blood will be ours, and once it is, we'll reshape this kingdom to our will." Seraphina stepped forward, standing beside Rydian. She was trembling, but there was a fire in her eyes. "You'll never control me," she said, her voice trembling but defiant. "You'll never control my power, it's mine, and it will destroy you." Kieran's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "Then prepare to face the consequences of defying us." The battle began, fierce and fast. Rydian fought alongside his men, every strike and every move driven by the need to protect Seraphina. The Dark Circle members were strong, their magic powerful, but Rydian's resolve was unshakable. He would protect her, no matter the cost. As the night stretched on, Rydian found himself face to face with Kieran. The two men locked eyes, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. Rydian knew that this was the moment that would decide everything. "I won't let you win," Rydian said, his voice fierce. Kieran sneered. "You're too late." But just as he moved to strike, Seraphina stepped forward, her eyes glowing with an intense light. The magic inside her surged, a force so powerful that it sent a shockwave through the air. Rydian watched in awe as Seraphina took control of the power within her. It was a power that could save them or destroy them. With a final, decisive blow, the Dark Circle was defeated. Kieran fell, and with him, the threat that had loomed over them for so long. The battle was over. But as Rydian stood there, catching his breath, he realized that the fight was not yet finished. The price of redemption had been paid. The kingdom was safe, but Seraphina's power was still a burden she would carry, and he would be there by her side, no matter what.